All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining today's meeting of the Transit Working Group. My name is Shirley Comerty, and I am a transportation planner with the staff of the Boston Region MPO. We have started recording this meeting, and the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel by the end of the week. So I'm going to start us off by reading our pre-meeting notices. Read our notice of non-discrimination reads that you are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. To read the full notice of your rights and protections, visit www.bostonmpo.org/NPO_non_discrimination. These are our virtual meeting guidelines. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. You can find this by either clicking on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with the raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. If you are on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand, and if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Erin McGuire via the chat box at emaguire@ctps.org or by calling 857-702-3681. Our accessibility statement reads that this meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, Level AA standards, and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, please contact Erin McGuire, NPO staff, at emaguire@ctps.org or by calling 857-702-3681. So now we can go into introductions. We have a pretty small group today. I'm just going to call on the first person, and I'll ask that you popcorn or just sort of call out the next person so we can go around and introduce ourselves. So like I said, my name is Sri Leka. I manage the Unified Planning Work Program for the Boston Region MPO, among other special projects, such as the Transit Working Group. So I'll pass it to Lisa Weber.
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Weber and I am Customer Engagement Coordinator at the Department of System-Wide Accessibility at the MBTA. And next on my screen is Ethan.
Thanks, Lisa. Hey everybody, I'm Ethan Lapointe. I'm the Transportation Improvement Program Manager with the Boston Region MPO. I'll pass it over to my colleague, Erin.
Good afternoon. I am an Assistant Transportation Planner with the Boston Region MPO, and I will pass this to Andrew Jennings.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Jennings. I'm a Bill Rutgers representative on the board of the Lowell Regional Transit Authority.
Thanks, Andrew.
I will pass it to Matthew Peterson.
Hello, Matthew Peterson, City of Boston Transportation Department, Transit Planner. Next on my screen, I'll pass it to Judy Shanley.
Hi, everybody. I'm Judy Shanley. I am the National Director for Transportation and Mobility at the National Office of Easter Seals, and I work on Federal Transit Administration projects in FTA Region 1. And I live in Boston, so happy to be here. Sorry. Dave Hong.
Thank you. This is Dave Hong. Also Boston Region MPO staff, manager of MPO activities. I will pass it over to David Kozis.
Hi, I'm David Kozis. I'm the transportation coordinator for the City of Newton Public Works Department. And I also attend the MPO meetings to represent Mayor Fuller. And let's see, how about going to Kat next?
Hey all, I'm Kat Benish. I'm the Chief of Operations Planning, Scheduling, and Strategy here at the MBTA, and I am here to talk about BTD and diversions.
Yeah.
And I don't know who hasn't gone yet since I joined late. So I'll go to Alexander, my comrade in arms.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Alexander Onshri James, Director of Contracted Bus Services at the MBTA. So if you might have interacted with me dealing with shuttle services with the private vendors as well as the private fixed route services, that is my department, as well as planning for the alternate services when we do these diversions. I'm not sure who I'm supposed to pass it to, but whomever's next in queue.
Len.
Yeah, thank you. I raised my hand just to help you out, and so someone might be able to help me out to do the same. So I'm Leonard Diggins-Mead. I am representing the advisory council for the MPO, and on the board along with David Kozis-Mead, and I will pass it to Susan Barrett. Thank you.
Sure. The hand raising helps. Susan Barrett, Town of Lexington Transportation Manager. Thank you, and I'll pass it to Maria Foster.
Hi, I'm Maria Foster. I coordinate transportation programs for the Council on Aging in Brookline, and I'm passing it to Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Leung. I'm with the City of Boston's Disabilities Commission, and I don't see any further hands. Oh, Constance. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Connie Millis from the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. I'm a transit planner. And I'll pass it to, any more hands raised? Annette.
Thanks. Sorry, I couldn't find my hand raise button. I'm Annette Demshire, Director of Policy and Planning for the Boston Region MPO, and I will pass it over to Stella.
Hey everyone, Stella Jordan. I'm the Public Engagement Program Manager at the MPO. Is there anyone else who hasn't gone? Feel free to just jump off of mute if you want, if you can't figure out the hand raise. If not, I will turn it back over to Srileka.
Thanks, Stella. And if we missed you, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. And we will move on now to our presentation for today. We have staff from the Boston Transportation Department to talk about their experience managing service disruptions with the MBTA and coordinating with T staff during these times. This will be structured as a bit more of a conversation, Q&A. So please have your questions ready for our presenter, Matthew Peterson from the Boston Transportation Department. Matthew, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and so I'm here with Kat Benish and Alexander Harry James from the MBTA, who are extremely close partners on all of the work involving subway diversions within the city of Boston. And so, yeah, I think we want to kind of focus on, I think, two of the kind of topic areas that I feel like I kind of sent over to us as kind of key kind of areas of interest around how the cooperation between the city and the MBTA works. And so I think two areas I want to focus on are accessibility, which I think is a huge aspect of providing alternative services, and then kind of the decision making and kind of process around managing those diversions. So I guess maybe just to start, and then I'll just give an overview of maybe my role, and then I'll maybe pass it over to the T in terms of explaining, like, you know, how they've, I guess, experienced that relationship. My role as a transit planner at the city of Boston, in coordinating with the T around service disruptions, is to kind of following on to our mayor's commitment, starting with the Orange Line shutdown last summer, really trying to do what we can to enable the MBTA to have as successful as possible operation during what is obviously kind of a very kind of a state of exception in a very different kind of situation than would be the normal operation system. So our goal is to enable a successful shuttle operation, enable safe, accessible, and usable alternative services, and try to do everything we can to make sure that the MBTA is able to get people where they need to be as on time as they can. So that includes things, with the transportation department, we run the roadways. That includes things like any kinds of signage changes, curb regulation changes, any kinds of changes involving directionality or traffic circulation changes. And so we do a lot of work coordinating with the MBTA on understanding their needs. We do a lot of work with the MBTA Transit Priority Team to do some of the planning around those diversions. And then we also work with system-wide accessibility and our own Commission on Disabilities. I work with Sarah Leung a lot around kind of making sure that we can do what we can as a city to ensure that sidewalks and ramps that are within paths of travel for alternative services are as safe as possible within are as safe as possible within a relatively short amount of time ahead of a diversion. I guess what maybe I would pitch over to Alexander is, I guess, what you see maybe as the I guess the dividing line on your side with what the MBTA is doing and how you see your relationship with the city on that front.
Sure. So I'll start from overarching of the mindset of how we plan these closures, and then I'll speak on how our relationship is. So with these closures, since I've joined the organization almost 3 years ago, and I used to work at Transport for London as a transport planner there, organizing London Underground services. The heart of everything that we do in this team is trying to minimize journey times as much as possible. It's not easy. It's not something we can do all the time, but we do try to identify mitigations such as bus priority schemes or doing more direct routing or in frequency like that, just to try to make the shuttle service lesser of a bad experience, because I know there's a stigmatism against shuttle service. Everyone's like, it's a shuttle bus, don't want to touch it. And trying to counter that, saying, okay, let's deliver a service that's actually good, not as bad, and makes you feel like you still want to go out and travel across the network, even if we're having a planned closure. So what Matthew mentioned about how we engage with each other is spot on. And a lot of it too is that we want to increase transparency and collaboration, so we're able to do a little bit more forward planning instead of reactive planning, because there are times that we are put in a bind that we have to deliver something on a short notice because of whatever XYZ reason. But there's other times that we can see things ahead and we try to sit there and say, hey, we see this is coming. Can we take some time to mitigate some of these things and try to make the service better? So I think that's probably everything that between what the overarching thing that we do in the group and how our report is of the city of Boston.
Yeah, and maybe to dig into like one specific thing on the accessibility piece, just because I know there's a lot of folks here who deal with that as part of their work. In that kind of one example of the way we've worked very closely with the MBTA, both in terms of the alternative service planning and the system-wide accessibility side, we will do site walks and rolls with system-wide accessibility along the routes of these shuttles, around the places that these shuttles are stopping, to ensure that we have a really clear idea of like, are there kind of like we call them make safe repairs that our public works department can implement on a rapid basis in advance of a closure, to make sure that we have mitigated as much as possible any potential obstacles in the path of travel. So Sarah Leung could probably speak to this. I won't put her on the spot though, that, for example, like at Copley Square, there are places where we were able to coordinate the filling in of like a disused tree pit that has not had a tree in it for some time, filling that in to make it safe with pavement, or by, we're doing some brickwork to repair brick or filling stuff in with asphalt. Not exactly the most, $5 sign repairs, but things that will make the surface safe and usable in the short term in advance of a closure that is going to result in a lot more people traversing these pedestrian paths that might not happen during normal subway service. One other element of coordination on the city side is working with, having to work with contractors in order to expand some of our capacity to deploy some of the traffic control for these diversions. So things like cones, things like temporary curb regulations. That's something where as a city, we've had to do some extra contracting to have that capacity. And so that's for things like developing the traffic control plans or developing new signal timing plans for these kind of special situations where there's suddenly maybe a shuttle every few minutes or less going through an intersection in a path that normally wouldn't see that level of movement. So those are just some of the examples of some of the things that we've been working on with the T in order to deliver better alternative services during subway closures. I guess with that, there's obviously a lot more we could go into. I regret that I do not have a more in-depth presentation, partially because there's been a lot of meetings involving planning for diversions, so I haven't really had the time to work on that. But I guess I'd be happy to, answer any questions or maybe take any questions as a way to dig deeper into this issue in the next little bit.
Yeah, David.
Thank you, David Kozis from Newton. So we seem to know from the T pretty well in advance when they're going to have us, some kind of diversion or disruption. I think we get an email every week about, the train lines. I think we're informed pretty well, but, I think that we don't do well, at least in Newton, when we have some sort of construction project happening on a street in Newton, right? If there's Eversource or, water or, some paving or something, whatever it is, I don't think we have a great process to get that information to the T. I feel like every once in a while I get a random call from someone in service planning that says, oh, our buses can't get through, what's happening? We need to deviate. And sometimes I just have to figure out and get back to them. So I thought maybe we would touch on this in this meeting. It probably happens 100 times as much in Boston. And if there's some information of how maybe Boston handles that kind of thing to get your information, sort of the reverse.
Yeah, so Alexander can definitely speak to the fact that we don't do a perfect job of that either. It's something that is definitely something that we are trying to get better at and work with the teams within the city that manage construction and manage utility tariffs. I think one thing that we are working on as a city, on the city side, and I'm not taking credit or responsibility for this, but basically I'm acknowledging that we do not always meet that mark when we are in terms of trying to get that information to the T in a timely manner. There are always going to be kind of emergencies and like the real, like basic meaning of the word, like things that kind of emerge and come out of nowhere. When it comes to things like construction, there are always going to be last minute changes, but I definitely think we are trying to get better at communicating those in advance. And on the city side, we're working with the commissioner to kind of set up a better workflow and working relationship with the construction management team and with the special events committee to make sure that there's a lot more transparency onto what are both the planned and in some cases unplanned or emergency actions that are occurring on streets that involve things like a road closure or a diversion of a detour of traffic. So one example, we had during the last Green Line diversion of the Central Tunnel, there were a couple things that were going on in that last weekend. There was a pre-scheduled road race along Commonwealth Avenue that we had already issued for the permit for in September. And so we ended up allowing that to continue, which resulted in a pretty inconvenient detour for the MBTA shuttles running between Kenmore and Copley. What we were able to reschedule was a planned tear down of the tower crane on the Turnpike Parcel 12 project, which would have shut down all of Mass Ave southbound for the entire weekend and detoured about traffic onto Com Ave, which was where all the shuttles were running. And so we were able to shift that to a following weekend, just given the fact that there is all of the shuttle activity happening on Com Ave during that time. So that's like one example of one way where we were able to catch something, but we're definitely not perfect. We're definitely still trying to get better at getting those things more in advance to improve that process, both for our side as well as for the MBTA's operations.
If I may add to that, if I may add to that, hi David, you're definitely on my list, sir. So yes, you get the emails from me with on the weekly look ahead. But But what I will also say too is that if you're not quite sure to whom to go to, feel free to reach out to me. I can help direct you to who you need to be. And I could also probably get you a cheat sheet, if you will, if that's something you're interested in, of knowing who to reach out for what. If it's something that's shuttle related or something that's regular fixed route related, I'm happy to get a cheat sheet of contacts for you and send it over if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think I'm talking more about how to get our information to you guys to prepare for if you need to have a temporary diversion. So I'm wondering, in Boston, are you guys working toward, like, for routine construction or things that you might know a little bit, a couple days in advance? Are you trying to funnel it all through one person to coordinate that with the T, or one department? Or, I feel like for us, it's sort of, unclear.
So currently at the city, things are kind of funneled into one person. There or one team. We have a construction management team that is responsible for approving or disapproving construction management plans. So things like the traffic control around a construction site or something like that. One thing that we are working on doing is while there are some formal locations where coordination with the T occurs, there's a special events committee that does theoretically have representation from the T on it. There's not enough connections between like past planned, construction activity or construction management plans. And, there's not enough visibility onto those things on like a day-to-day basis to ensure that when I or Alexander or the T are like planning out how a shuttle route is going to work, we're trying to figure out what the best way is to make sure that we have better visibility onto what is planned to happen on the streets, because there is a place where all that information is. It's not necessarily easily accessible to everyone within the transportation department, and we're trying to figure out like what the best way is to make sure that we have a better workflow there. But
all right, thank you. If you figure out something good, we'd be interested in.
Yeah, I'll let you know. We are moving towards having more things just be hosted on our city kind of file system and visible to more people. I think the key thing there is making sure that people are referring to the right information and not just referring to information that is there, which might be out of date or incomplete or incorrect. So that is something we are working on improving. And if we figure it out, we'll let you know.
Thank you. We'll go to Anne.
Hi, thanks so much. So I have a comment and a question. My comment is that as a Boston resident and sort of looking at the statistics in the Boston area, it's clear we're reaching a saturation of private car traffic. And I noticed when the Orange Line shutdown was announced, there was predictions of like Carmageddon, right? Total gridlock of the entire area. No one was going to go everywhere. It didn't seem to materialize. So my question, I guess, goes a little bit to Matthew. What I've seen the Boston Transportation Department do is actually use some of these shutdowns in the school of every crisis has the seeds of an opportunity, and actually put in some permanent bus lanes and other things that sort of start moving road use away from private car traffic and more onto like bus priority lanes, bus rapid transit, more active transportation. And I'm curious if that is continuing to be something that Boston Transportation or other transit departments are trying to do, which is we're never going to get rid of traffic by putting more road space to cars. Can we get more people on transit? And buses in Boston in particular, I just sat in Grove Hall for like 2 or 3 light cycles, just waiting to get through that intersection, and it's just a massive waste on a bus where you're standing there jammed toe to nose with everyone else.
So yeah, and completely agree. There are definitely, so I work on the transit team, and that is something that was newly established just a few years ago, and is now around 4 or 5 people full-time working on transit priority and working on delivering more space for transit on the streets of Boston. One thing, of course, is that shuttle routes don't necessarily follow bus routes. So with the case of the Orange Line diversion, a lot of those things were about supporting the 39 bus and other things that were using those services. So there was an overlap between the shuttle routes or the alternative service routes that were provided and the shuttle, the diversion route. So that's one thing, is that there's not always a permanent feature that should remain, right? You know, there's things that might pop up and then go away because there's not a need on that road for transit priority, because there may not even be a transit route that runs on that road. But it's definitely something we do think about in terms of, like, do we try something out here? A much more lower stakes example is during the Ashmont branch diversion on Dorchester Avenue. Well, we didn't turn Dorchester Avenue into a busway because it's a very narrow street. We did institute a lot of curb regulation changes, such as loading zones, to reduce double parking along that corridor. And some of those we are definitely going to evaluate and consider for making permanent, because that's the sort of thing that it's a very like low lift thing that really can have a positive impact on the function of that corridor. So we are definitely working on other programs in other parts of the city, across the city, around what you say about, you know, promoting promoting sustainable transportation modes and promoting buses, active transportation, walking, rolling, and making those safer and more available. But it's not all the time that those have a nice overlap with the planning that we do for service diversions and alternative service priority.
Thanks. We'll go to Judy.
Hi, Matthew, I appreciated what you said about doing an assessment of the sidewalks when you have shuttle service to ensure the integrity of the sidewalks. It's sad we have to do that there's so many challenges in pedestrian access. I wondered if you take that data and you share it with the people that could make permanent improvements in sidewalk accessibility and to feed into the ADA transition plan.
So, and Sarah, please catch me if I say anything incorrect here. But so my understanding with the sidewalk, so I'm in transportation, and so I normally am not working in public works land, which is they're the people who do all the curbs and sidewalks and everything. We have a separate and more comprehensive sidewalk condition audit program, where we do inspect sidewalks for condition, inspect accessibility, and inspect it on a regular and ongoing basis. Our focus with the kind of sidewalks and early action is basically trying to, while we have this data in kind of a more abstract form around like, oh, there are, you know, this many sidewalks that are this, it's a bad thing, this needs to be redone, this needs to be redone. Often our inspections are not going to tell us like, okay, if we wanted to just like kind of put a Band-Aid on this, because that's what we're doing when you go out there to make it safe. We're doing make safe work that is not, it is not a full repair. It is not a complete replacement of the sidewalk. It is something that is going to make it safe, make it passable. It's not necessarily going to make it a perfectly, you know, high quality, accessible pedestrian footpath in all cases. It is going to make it better. It is going to make it usable. It's not going to make it, you know, in all cases, as good as it possibly could be. And so that's something where I recognize the sentiment there around trying to get that information into the people making those decisions, but we have so many sidewalks and so many things to make accessible that the prioritization for that whole planning process is conducted through this whole other larger kind of public works capital planning process for the amount of dollars we spend on sidewalk repair each year. So they're a little separate, and kind of like with the transit thing, like they don't always align with where those investments would be, given that a lot of our investments are made according to a lot of the social vulnerability index, like the degree of transit ridership of the corridor, the lack of access to vehicles, kind of private drives, where we do sidewalk construction each year. So they're kind of moving on two separate tracks, if that makes sense.
Thank you. We'll go to Lisa.
And thank you so much for this. Our department certainly works a lot with diversions, and also in my role as mobility advocate, because I wear many, many hats. One thing that comes up a lot is communication. I wish the media was our friend. I wish the media went out of their way to let riders know as far in advance as possible what to expect and what to do. That is unfortunately not always the case. And we talk very frequently in rooms like this about fast, frequent, reliable service. We don't necessarily talk as much about convenience. We don't necessarily talk as much about comfort. And for people who have other options other than transit, one of the big questions is, how do we communicate the information about diversions, and how do we make people feel that they are comfortable and convenient choices? And I'll give you an example of something that I think worked, that we did a little bit on the fly. When we had a B branch closure and we had diversions, a local nonprofit that I volunteer for worked very closely with City of Boston and the folks in this room, and they literally printed flyers, and those of us who volunteer kind of divided up Allston Brighton, and we just went to people's houses and put the flyers in people's mailboxes. And for the people who were home when I was there and they were asking questions, I was really happy to answer them, and they said thank you. Do I necessarily think a flyer can go into every mailbox at every diversion? Probably not. But I think in terms of just getting the information out there, I think will make people less angry. I think they will be less taken aback. And I welcome creative ideas. I know it goes out on T-Alerts. MBTA updated the website, but anything that we can do to help folks feel comfortable so they continue to make transit a choice. I very much welcome ideas, because I cannot underestimate enough, or overestimate, or whatever the word is, like just how important it is for people to know. Because that first Monday, there was a lot of anger towards these shuttle diversions, and that anger would not necessarily have been there if we just had more options to communicate. So I welcome any and all ideas, and in our department and in my volunteer work, I'll certainly communicate as best as we can, but we're just hoping to have a little bit of a discussion about that.
Yeah, so I think on the communication side, that is something that the city obviously cares a lot about as well, where we are the level of government that it like sits right at. We're the first line of response for a lot of people's immediate concerns. When somebody has a problem in their day-to-day life, the person they will call often works for the city. And so I think that's something where we've been working with the T to kind of coordinate those efforts. And obviously we're not getting it right all the time, but it's something where we are trying to work better together and kind of make sure that where we can amplify their message, we can do that. Where we can advise them on, what languages are important to include, we can do that. And so I think it's something where we are really trying to push that issue, because I think that is something that both we and the T care a lot about, and we do want to get it right. I don't know if we've gotten it right yet together, but it's something that we are continuously trying to work on, making that better, and also then telling the story about, what the juice is, right? This is the squeeze, like what's the juice? And the juice in this case, in some cases, like for the Red Line diversion on the Ashmont branch, was noticeably improved service on that section of the line, right? There is real change that is happening as a result of this disruption and of this work. And, it is something where it's going to be tough to get it all done, but I think it's something where we also want to be able to tell people the story that, it's not in vain, that this is real, there are real things getting done and there is real progress being made. And I think that is coming through. Like I hear that when I talk to people, on the train, when I hear that when I talk to people who are like, overhear people even just talking about it on the train as they're planning their lives around the next week not being able to do what they're doing today. But you can hear people talking about it getting better in other places. And so I do think it's both the advance awareness, and it's also then telling the story of what's happening to make people feel a little bit better about the fact that things are inconvenient in the moment.
Thank you all for these really great, really thoughtful questions. Do we have any more from the audience? If not, I think I have a couple. If not, I did want to ask, I guess this is for either Matthew or folks with the T. Do you anticipate climate-driven service disruptions to become more of a problem in the future? And do you have a special approach dealing with these kinds of issues, or are you looking to develop a special approach?
Sorry, do you mind asking the question again?
Yeah. Do you anticipate climate-driven service disruptions to become more of a problem in the coming future?
I'll maybe say from the city side, I think that the way we view service disruptions is not necessarily going to change. I think that there are different considerations in extreme weather. So for example, one thing is that we procure tents, shelters. We did that during the Orange Line disruption. We continue to do that for other service disruptions. I think the impact of climate on passenger comfort during diversions is important. But I think at least from an operational standpoint, the necessary actions and coordination and communication around a diversion don't necessarily depend on the instigating cause, right? What matters is that there is a subway line or there is a piece of critical transportation infrastructure that is out of service and needs to be replaced, or needs to be or is out of service due to high water or something, and so there is some alternative service put into place. Once that has been established, then what's important on the city side is operationalizing that, making sure that the roadways function as they should, and making sure that the alternative services work as well as they can. So at least from the city side, I wouldn't say that there would be necessarily a huge special approach beyond making sure that we are putting, that rider experience and that kind of, making sure that it is a safe experience. We want to have tents if people are standing outside in, really hot weather and direct sun. So that sort of thing.
So I'll try to answer this, and if I don't answer it properly, please let me know and just be and I apologize in advance. And if Kat wants to add with this, that's fine. So when it comes to climate change, we're a bit more proactive in that sense. So for example, when we know there's a inclement weather that's coming and it's going to affect the D branch, for example, we know to always have buses on standby for that, because we know downed trees, might be some other flooding, little issues along the right of way that we're doing work in advance just to be on standby, or we actually deploy the buses depending if it's needed. We did the same thing on Monday morning because of the storm that happened over the weekend. We had buses on standby ready to go in case that we needed to use them. So we do have internal processes, particularly if there's a EOC that stands up and things like that, that we will make sure everything's ready to go. But even if the EOC is not there, we do have buses on standby, particularly with particular lines that we know typically go down, such as the Mattapan or the D branch. So I hope that answers your question. So it's nothing special, but we know to be ready for it whenever that time comes around.
Yeah, no, that does answer my question. Thank you. So any other questions from members for our presenters today?
Well, thank you for the invitation to present here. I apologize for not having a presentation, but thank you for the opportunity to kind of tell the story a little bit of how the city is working with the MBTA. Obviously, Boston is not the only municipality in the region. There are a lot of municipalities that are affected by these diversions. I'm sure that even maybe some of you in this room from other municipalities have worked with the MBTA on diversions. I mean, we're not the only people with experience doing this, but we have had to do a large volume of work over a relatively short amount of time because of the extent of the MBTA system within Boston and the amount of rehabilitation work. So we're happy to be able to kind of tell a story of being able to enable the alternative services that are necessary to kind of keep the city moving, keep the region moving during some of these service disruptions.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming here to sort of tell us the story and, of course, all your work. If there are no more questions for the presenters, we can move on to member items. So this is kind of the space in the sort of time in the meeting where we want to hold space for members to coordinate on transit issues in their community, on goings on and kind of have this be just an open conversation more about what's going on in your municipality. If there's anything you'd like to share. Yeah, Lisa.
Our RTAG meeting is coming up on Thursday. That's the Riders Transportation Access Group. Advises the MBTA on matters affecting folks who have disabilities or older adults. And as soon as I stop talking, because I can't talk and write at the same time, I will get the link and I will put it in the chat, and all are welcome.
Lisa? Yeah, David.
So I guess I'll just ask if anybody knows what is going on with the bus shelter program. Is it still happening? I can't seem to get an answer. I don't know if it's been canceled or sort of what's going on with that, if anyone here knows. Oops. Shoot. Okay.
David, out of curiosity, are you referring to bus shelter procurement with MPO target dollars or through the MBTA?
No, it's through the MBTA.
Okay.
I remember going to a meeting, it's been a couple of years, and then we had a bus shelter program at one point, and I thought that we had another one, but maybe we don't anymore.
I don't know, David, but I'll ask folks, I'm in service planning, and they may not be the ones that have the answer, but they might be able to give me some guidance as to who I should ask. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So hold me to it, all right, we'll see each other soon.
Okay.
Sure.
Thanks, Lisa, for posting the link in the chat for the RTAG meeting. We'll also use that link in our follow-up email to members of this meeting. So we appreciate that. If there are no more members items or no more updates, we can end the meeting a little early. Thank you again to our presenters, to Matthew for sort of walking us through their work. We really appreciate it. Thank you all for coming to our meeting. Our next meeting will be in February, but we'll announce dates and topics a bit closer to then. But for now, we can end it early. And as always, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or concerns. The meeting recording will be posted on our YouTube by the end of the week. Yeah, so thank you all so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too.